Welcome to Make Your Money Matter. I'm your host, Brad Barrett. I'm also a managing director and partner here at One Capital Management, and I'm here each and every week to educate and inform on all things financial because after all, your money matters. I think a lot of times our psychology, especially when it comes to things as important as money, we have to realize that our neighbors, our friends, our community around us are dealing with the same kind of stuff that we are, maybe in different forms and for different reasons, but they are dealing with it, which is why you maybe have heard the term, you might have heard this term before, cash is king. So today, we're gonna be going into holding cash and more, but before we do, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. All right, let's get into it. The majority of my career, we've been at low interest rates. And I've also been sharing frequently in the past probably 18 months or so that over the past, let's say 15 years, all of us really, since the Great Recession, since 08, 09, we've been somewhat spoiled. It's okay to say this, okay? We've had a very low interest rate environment. We've had a very high and robust stock market over that time period, as well as with real estate. And, I've been kind of sharing with clients and on our radio programs and different podcasts that I'm calling it the hangover from 2008. But I want to talk about that cash piece because what I want to share with everyone listening and watching right now is if you have cash right now, the one positive side of a rising interest rate environment is actually getting paid for your cash now. So for those of you still sitting in checking and savings accounts, getting paid less, let's say than 0.5%, now's this time to start looking at money markets, maybe even CDs. And if you don't mind a lockup there, but we're gonna talk about the basis of why, because I can come at you with a bunch of numerical data as to why, but our brains filter it differently. If I were to say to you, hey, if you had $100,000 sitting in cash right now and you have $15,000 of credit cards, you know how many times I've noticed that people won't use the cash to pay off the credit card? And it's ironic because in the cash account, you're making like maybe 0.5% if you're lucky. And on the credit card, you might be paying 10%. So you're literally okay with a 9.5% on what I'll call a rental charge because we don't want to get rid of the cash. Because the cash to us, as we all have been in our upbringing, right, is security. But the smart money way to think about it is you want to make sure that you're not costing yourself what we in our business call arbitrage or phantom money. And I want to attack the why about that. The why you'd want to look at cash relative to interest rates and things that are out there right now that you can look at. So I need to state this loud and clear when I talk about looking at places to park cash. What I'm talking about specifically around cash is not necessarily your emergency funds. And that a rule of thumb, as I've shared on the show many times, is typically between 3 and 6 months of overhead. Now, if you're not in that camp for a second, don't go getting down on yourself, okay? There's a lot of things going on in that statement that I go through with clients one-on-one. There's a lot of houses being bought, reallocation of cash. This is a present time period conversation when it comes to how you're looking at your monies. But let me be very clear about something. Money is intangible. It's an intangible store of value, right? That's all it is. For example, think gold, silver, platinum, rice, salt, things like that, commodities. Currency, on the other hand, is a tangible form of money. So instead of trading silver for salt, you can buy salt with currency. Isn't that right? So here's why that's important and why I'm bringing this up. Before 1971, the banks could only print as much currency as they had gold. If they wanted to print more currency, they had to sell a percentage of their gold. But for many of you historians out there, like myself, what happened? The US dollar had been removed from what we had called, at that time, the gold standard in 1971. And since then, currency has been backed by, let's be frank, not a whole lot. Theoretically, money itself is somewhat worthless. It's not backed by what we would consider anything like it was in 1971, which was backed by gold. It was backed by the currency of gold. Now today, we all know this, and there's a lot of different political sides to this, but it's not really a rap about that. It's just a kind of a matter of fact discussion point today. Banks can print as much currency as they want. I mean, that's the first thing I want to get across. Cash and coins right now, for the most part, if you look at different stats, makes up around 3% of the world's money. I want to state that for a second. 3% is made up of coins and cash and greenbacks. The other 97% is basically debt. Let me give you an example. Many of us have likely bought a house before. Imagine if you were to buy a house and take out a $500,000 mortgage. Theoretically, if you think about it, that $500,000 didn't exist before they simply created it by typing a few numbers on a screen. Now, I'm obviously being a little loose on this, but hear me out. It didn't exist before. They created it by typing in some numbers. So when anyone gets a loan, you get money that has been created theoretically out of thin air. Now, why is that important to know other than it being maybe an aha moment for some of you. When the government needs money, where do they go? They go to the central bank and ask for a loan. The central bank gives them money created out of, you can call it this way, but thin air, in exchange for what? Government bonds. So this is newly created money, floods the system, and essentially devalues the existing money. By the way, I economically just described to you in its basic form inflation. New money, flooding the system, devaluing current or existing money. For anyone right now who is sitting on cash that, again, is above or beyond your emergency funds, I'm going to be totally frank, you're getting wrecked. Those that are maybe on the side or of not wanting the market volatility and are being fearful, I understand that. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just being candid with you here. And you're going to go out there in the world and get basically nothing for your cash while inflation is running at 6 and 7. You're getting wrecked. You have to go into an environment where you're making money with your cash. I mean, if you're making less than 1% with inflation, first of all, inflation over the past 30 years has roughly been about 2.5% to 3%, and currently, as I mentioned before, running around 6 to 7. And many of us have seen the reports on cost of living adjustments and wage increases. And if you have a historical inflation number around, let's call it 3%, and you are in cash making less than 1%, you're losing money. You're losing about 2%. Inflation's running at 3. Basically, everything else around you is going up by 3%, and you're making 1% on cash, you're losing 2%. And the irony I'm trying to get at here is, I'm not trying to say this is, again, right or wrong. You can do what you want to do. My point is this: we tend to be more conservative on things that actually make more monetary sense and more aggressive on things that make less monetary sense. I mean, this is subconscious. This is behavioral. Maybe from your upbringing, maybe it's generational. I've noticed it a lot in generational aspects. Remember, we're only one generation away from the Great Depression era. So many of you watching or listening, this is one of those conversations where we have, we were raised by parents or grandparents who have gone through things like that, where the Great Depression, before credit cards, before retirement plans, right? I mean, just forget the Great Depression for a second. Just think about an era where you didn't have credit. The mid 50s and 60s, we had layaways, Sears catalog, things like that. We didn't have retirement plans even until the 70s. So this is all somewhat new, and there is some generational aspect to this also with behavioral and mark of the times, depending on, different viewpoints. So I want to be very clear about something when I share this, that it's not a knock to anyone out there, myself included, who do these kind of things. I check myself sometimes and I'm like, why do I feel like I'm more safe if I park cash, even though I know logically that I can go and make more than that over the same time period to which I would have held the cash in the lower interest-bearing account. So while you're working hard to save your money, for those of you who have cash, you've done something, right? You've either maybe borrowed it from an asset that's making more, or you still have, if you sold that asset, you cover your debt plus some, or you saved up that for a certain goal, or just have what I call dry powder account. So what can you do with the cash? Here's what I want to share. I want to bring what I saw the smart money world, the people that you and I would look and say, man, that guy knows how to make money, earn money, grow money, ultimately protect money. That's the business here at One Capital we are in for our clients. I want to bring those smart money ideas and theologies to all of us. So first and foremost, let's play the game of the banks. That's kind of when it comes to cash right now, play the game of the banks. I mean, we can't print money, right? But banks also invest assets and make their money work for them. I love the statement there. It's like, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? We got to be in the game to play. So just to be clear, when I talk about investing in this cash conversation, we can do it pragmatically and logically and very efficiently, but we also need to do it with a fundamental understanding as to why. Why are we doing it? I mean, you can do the same thing. So I want to introduce a word that many of my clients have heard me say, and the word is arbitrage. I just mentioned before. It's the difference, the delta, and we have to start thinking about that sometimes. And for any of you right now, if you have debt, maybe not on a 0% credit card, or you're pushing it down the road kind of thing, but just debt or credit cards, and we have cash, think about that first. I get the question all the time: should I pay off my debt first or invest cash? Odds are, and I don't know your personal situation, but odds are if the debt is double digits, I would say pay the debt down first. It's a headwind. It's like if you're a golfer, you're gonna bring a bigger club out to hit into the wind, right? So instead of hitting a bigger club, why don't you curtail the wind and bring the right club out? Same thing with investing, okay? And like if you're deep in credit card debt, we actually recently launched our How to Pay Off Your Debt course, where you can use the strategies I personally have used with hundreds of my clients who have eliminated their debt. You can check the description box below for more information. And one thing that kind of gets some eyebrows being raised is if you go and pay something off today that is charging you, let's say 10% on a Visa or MasterCard or something like that, you earned yourself 10%. Let me just pause for a second. if you pay something that you were paying 10% on, our brains don't think about it this way. You definitely weren't marketed to this way over the course of your maybe adult life and investing, or even like your upbringing with parents, but you earned that 10%. Dare I say, you guaranteed yourself a 10% comeback, right? Because you were paying 10, you paid it off, now it's gone. I mean, there's not a whole lot of guarantees in the world, but that's pretty much what it is. I mean, you don't hear, and many people say that because, again, our brains don't think that way. But again, if you go and pay that off, you pay the 10%, you just made 10%. It's inverse investing, if you will. So anything I say with regards to cash, make sure it all encompasses your overall wealth plan. Something we do here at One Capital, but I think more than anything with the rise in rates where they are, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that now's the time to look and think logically about, hey, look, if rates are rising and my debt is becoming more expensive, can I potentially get more bang for my buck on cash or future cash I might have while the banks are raising rates? The answer is yes. So I want to make sure everyone out there who watches and listens to the show really sees value in that and goes and looks for it. And again, we can help you with that. If you're a client, we've likely talked about it. If not, now's a great time to bring it up and see where things are at and go through the conversations as it surrounds your cash and ultimately your overall wealth management plan. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that today. If you did, be sure to subscribe to our show so you don't miss a single episode. And remember, make your money matter.